All right, so we're going to end this pathomechanics section on just talking about a few key areas in the foot and ankle that are kind of like high points for or hot spots for injuries. And I've already talked about them, I've alluded to them, kind of talked about the motion. So I hope it doesn't come off redundant, but we're just going to kind of summarize why these things happen. So when we're looking at this joint, we're first going to talk about the most common injury that happens to foot and ankle, lateral ankle sprain, right here. So we're going to talk about right in here, we talked about these lateral talofibular ligaments, these red ligaments that I have taped here that's going from the talus, the inside, that core of the ankle there, to the fibula. And so that motion that really strains that is going to be your subtalar motion down here. So your calcaneus rolling inward on your talus, and then also with that inversion having a talocurl. So when we're landing on a surface, we're going to land, but we're going to be slightly inverted and we're just going to roll out. And you can see that tape is already coming off. But the ligament, that is a small ligament to hold all of that area. So this is the most common thing that we see. There's a lot of research about these, and we'll talk about more on the next part of this module where we just dive deep into lateral ankle sprains. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then high ankle sprains is the other area, and this is the reverse. The exact reverse. So lateral ankle sprains, inversion, plantar flexion. Now we're going to go dorsiflexion and eversion. So that is going to put a lot of pressure up through the tibia and fibula through this, call this syndesmosis, this whole area, the joint. And that includes the anterior tibiofibular ligament, the posterior tibiofibular, going from the tibia to the fibula, and then also what you can't see, this invisible spider web like cartilage that goes all the way up the tibia. So it's just going to put a ton of force when we're up. So we slide tackle into something, our foot gets really pushed up further than it should, and we're putting force up. This ligament is a primary stabilizer in the anterior portion. So if it pops, if it pops, you're really going to have energy spread up. And then when we're talking about other injuries that are common spots to happen, with that inversion, when you roll in, you can break this bone here. There's multiple reasons why we can break it. You can just roll on it and have that direct compression. There's also stress. This area right here has a very poor blood supply. And so there's, when you get into these programs, you'll learn that there's like actually exact spots where there's different blood supplies. And depending on what's happening, you also have these muscles that come down the peroneal brevis or fibularis brevis, attaches right here, and that does eversion, kicks out a lot. So that area, there's a lot of pressure on this bone here, this attachment site. So we either roll on it or we have that brevis that kicks out, that in that eversion, and it just pulls on it a lot, then you can break that bone. You can also, when you roll over and invert, this fibula hangs on pretty low, and it can also hit the ground and kind of roll, and it can break off. The younger you are, the more common it is to have these fractures and bone injuries, because the bone is then softer than the ligaments at that point. That's why adults, we typically sprain or strain because our bones are much stronger than our ligaments. But as kids, the bones are still growing, they're malleable, they're like soft, and they often will break first. The ligaments and the muscles are stronger at that point. And then something that I have not talked about that I want to talk about, Lisfranc. So it just gets complicated because we're talking about these tarsal bones that I don't want to really get into because it's just complicated. But so much force, if you look at the gait cycle and what I wrote in the notes, when we land, so much force goes into this first ray, so our great toe, upper metatarsal, and up through this area here. And this is called our Lisfranc region. We refer to these tarsal bones that meet the first and second metatarsal Lisfranc area. There's ligaments there. And so when we land, especially if we land like toes pointed, and someone like lands on top of you and really crushes your foot, the energy will travel up this section and bust out, basically explodes. And so like the ligaments can tear, these bones can break. If the ligaments tear and the bones break, it can dislocate. So basically it can like have a significant widening here. So there's a lot of issues that can happen. This is a super complex injury and something we probably shouldn't even discuss that much in this course. But I wanted to just bring it up because it can be a common spot for injury in this midfoot region, because so much of our energy when we're like, especially single foot, toeing off, pushing off, is going straight up. Like everything travels this area and then goes up our leg. With that same token, the last thing I'm going to talk about is the great toe injury, because there's so much force. So if you look on the gait cycle, we are in single foot most of the time. When you increase that speed and we're running, we're always single support stance. And so all of that, the toe off, pushing with our great toe, I'm going to change it right here. There's tape actually to resemble this joint. And that great toe really pushes off there. And so when you push down on the ground, it's going to really push right here. And then you put your foot down right now and you're going to feel your toe automatically bend. This is extension when it goes up. Flexion is down. So when we extend that foot up, that puts a lot of pressure down here. You have a flexor tendon that comes up. It's under a lot of pressure, but right here, there's going to be a cartilage. It's called a volar plate or plantar plate, and it's just cartilage. And if this gets really hyperextended, so our cleats are made to not be super stable there, because we want to be able to toe off and get lots of speed. And so what can happen often on turf, which is why we call this turf toe, is that this gets hyperextended. It doesn't have a lot of support there from the shoe, and this volar plate can explode. The tendon can pull, it can stretch out, or you can degenerate, so we can get breakdown, so we can get that tendinopathy there. So there's a lot of things that can happen at this great toe. It's under a lot of stress. So in summary, when we're looking at the foot and ankle, really tight areas, that hot spot areas for injury, lateral ankle, because of that inversion plantar flexion, that really unstable position that's common for us when landing and running, jumping, any of those things. High ankle, just because of the force that can go up, and these two bones being held together just by ligaments. And it's lots of energy travels up the lower leg. And then thinking of the foot, the lateral foot can be under a lot of pressure if it lands on that, just with that in that eversion pulling on this area. But then the great toe and this Lisfranc, just all of that energy on the medial side of that foot. So that's it for the high impact kind of areas to this area of the foot and ankle. If you have any questions, anything that's unclear, please let me know. This last part, we're going to dive deep into a couple different injuries that we've already discussed. Those things that we already just talked about, we're going to dive even deeper. So maybe go to there, see if it makes sense. But if not, please reach out.